Chapter 11, Part 1 of How I Found Livingstone. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Beth Ann. How I Found Livingstone. Travels, Adventures, and Discoveries in Central Africa, including 4 months' residence with Dr. Livingstone. By Sir Henry M. Stanley. Chapter 11, Part 1. Through Ukawendi, Uvinza, and Uha to Ujiji. We bade farewell to Mrera on the 17th of October to continue our route northwestward. All the men and I were firm friends now, all squabbling had long ceased. Bombay and I had forgotten our quarrel. The Kirangozi and myself were ready to embrace, so loving and affectionate were the terms upon which we stood towards one another. Confidence returned to all hearts, for now, as Mabruki Unyanyembe said, we could smell the fish of the Tanganyika. Unyanyembe, with all its disquietude, was far behind. We could snap our fingers at the terrible Marumbu and his unscrupulous followers. And by, perhaps we may be able to laugh at the timid seer who always prophesied portentous events, Sheikh, the son of Nasib. We laughed joyously as we glided in Indian file through the young jungle beyond the clearing of Mrera, and boasted of our prowess. Oh, we were truly brave that morning. Emerging from the jungle, we entered a thin forest, where numerous ant hills were seen like so many sand dunes. I imagine that these ant hills were formed during a remarkably wet season, when possibly the forest-clad plain was inundated. I have seen ants at work by thousands, engaged in the work of erecting their hills in other districts suffering from inundation. What a wonderful system of cells these tiny insects construct! A perfect labyrinth, cell within cell, room within room, hall within hall, an exhibition of engineering talents and high architectural capacity, a model city, cunningly contrived for safety and comfort. Emerging after a short hour's march out of the forest, we welcomed the sight of a murmuring, translucent stream, swiftly flowing towards the northwest, which we regard with the pleasure which only men who have for a long time sickened themselves with that potable liquid of the foulest kind, found in salinas, mbugas, pools, and puddle holes, can realize. Beyond this stream rises a rugged and steep ridge, from the summit of which our eyes are gladdened with scenes that are romantic, animated, and picturesque. They form an unusual feast to eyes sated with looking into the depths of forests, at towering stems of trees, and at tufted crowns of foliage. We have now before us scores of cones dotting the surface of a plain which extends across southern Ukonongo to the territory of the Wafipa, and which reaches as far as the Rikwa plain. The immense prospect before which we are suddenly ushered is most varied. Exclusive of conical hills and ambitious flat-topped and isolated mountains, we are in view of the watersheds of the Rungwa River, which empties into the Tanganyika south of where we stand, and of the Malagarazi River, which the Tanganyika receives, a degree or so north of this position. A single but lengthy latitudinal ridge serves as a dividing line in the watershed of the Rungwa and the Malagarazi, and a score of miles or so farther west of this ridge rises another, which runs north and south. We camped on this day in the jungle, close to a narrow ravine with a marshy bottom, through the oozy, miry contents of which the waters from the watershed of the Rungwa slowly trickled southward towards the Rikwa plain. This was only one of many ravines, however, some of which were several hundred yards broad, others were but a few yards in width, the bottoms of which were most dangerous quagmires, overgrown with dense tall reeds and papyrus. Over the surface of these great depths of mud were seen hundreds of thin threads of slimy ochre colored water, which swarmed with animalcule. By and by, a few miles south of the base of this ridge, which I call Kasera from the country which it cuts in halves, these several ravines converge and debouch into the broad, marshy, oozy, spongy river of Usensi, which tends in the south easterly direction; after which, gathering the contents of the watercourses from the north and north east into its own broader channel, it soon becomes a stream of some breadth and consequence, and meets a river flowing from the east, from the direction of Urore, with which it conflows into the Rikwa Plain, and empties about 60 rectilineal miles further west into the Tanganyika Lake. The Rungwa River, I am informed, is considered as a boundary line between the country of Usowa on the north, and Ufipa on the south. We had barely completed the construction of our camp defences, when some of the men were heard challenging a small party of natives, which advanced toward our camp, headed by a man who, from his garb and head dress, we knew was from Zanzibar. After interchanging the customary salutations, I was informed that this party was an embassy from Simba, who ruled over Kasera in southern Unyamwezi. Simba, I was told, was the son of Makasawa, king of Unyanyembe, and was carrying on war with Wazavira, of whom I was warned to beware. He had heard such reports of my greatness that he was sorry I did not take his road to Ukawende, that he might have had the opportunity of seeing me, and making friends with me. But in the absence of a personal visit, Simba had sent this embassy to overtake me, in the hope that I would present him with a token of my friendship in the shape of cloth. Though I was rather taken aback by the demand, still it was politic in me to make this powerful chief my friend, lest on my return from the search after Livingstone he and I might fall out. And since it was incumbent on me to make a present for the sake of peace, it was necessary to exhibit my desire for peace by giving, if I gave at all, a royal present. The ambassador conveyed from me to Simba, or the Lion of Kasera, 2 gorgeous cloths, and 2 other doti consisting of Merikani and Kaneka, and if I might believe the ambassador, I had made Simba a friend for ever. On the 18th of October, breaking camp at the usual hour, we continued our march north westward by a road which zigzagged along the base of the Kasera mountains, and which took us into all kinds of difficulties. We traversed at least a dozen marshy ravines, the depth of mire and water which caused the utmost anxiety. I sunk up to my neck in deep holes in the Stygian ooze, caused by elephants, and had to tramp through the oozy beds of the Rungwa sources with any clothes wet and black with mud and slime. Decency forbade that I should strip, and the hot sun would also blister my body. Moreover, these morasses were too frequent to lose time in undressing and dressing, and, as each man was weighted with his own proper load, it would have been cruel to compel the men to bear me across. Nothing remained, therefore, but to march on, encumbered as I was by my clothing and accoutrements, into these several marshy watercourses, with all the philosophical stoicism that my nature could muster for such emergencies; but it was very uncomfortable, to say the least. We soon entered the territory of the dreaded Wazavira, but no enemy was in sight. Simba, in his wars, had made clean work of the northern part of Uzvira, and we encountered nothing worse than a view of the desolated country, which must have been once, judging from the number of burnt huts and debris of ruined villages, extremely populous. A young jungle was sprouting up vigorously in their fields, and was rapidly becoming the home of wild denizens of the forest. In one of the deserted and ruined villages I found quarters for the expedition, which were by no means uncomfortable. I shot 3 brace of guinea fowl in the neighbourhood of Msongi, the deserted village we occupied, and Ulimango, one of my hunters, bagged an antelope, called the Mbwala, for whose meat some of the Wanyamwezi have a superstitious aversion. I take this species of antelope, which stands about 3½ feet high, of a reddish hide,